wanted to send you a quick lesson review so you'd have something to reference from our recent short game lesson. So for the first half of the lesson, we spent our time in the sand. And if you'll remember, I really liked your technique, I liked your swing. There were just a couple of tweaks that we made to your setup and to our thought process about what part of the club we use. So in terms of the club, we were using the leading edge at first and really digging into the sand. And if you'll remember, I said that what we really want to do is open up ourselves to use the sole of the club, or the bounce, or the glide, whatever you want to call it, to prevent the club from digging. When you first got in the sand, you had a setup where the ball was pretty far back, your hands were forward, the club face was open, and the hands were down. When you were taking these shots, you're having a tough time controlling where in the sand you were hitting and also how much of the sand you were hitting. Some were very thin shots and you were sculling them over the green. Others, you'd hit too far behind the sand and hit too much sand and you would leave the ball in. So what we changed was your setup. We moved the ball more forward in the stance, so from the middle of the stance up towards your front heel, and then we raised the handle up, and we also moved the hands further back in the stance to get the shaft vertical. So once we had the setup corrected, I instructed you to use the sole of the club and thump the sand about an inch behind the ball with the sole of your club. This would have consistent results and consistent contact. The way we did that, I had you bring up the club, just like you did before, the technique was fine, and then come down and hit the sand with the bottom of the club right behind the ball. For the second half of the lesson, we went outside the bunker, onto the collar, or into the fairway, where we're having some mid-length chip shots and pitch shots. And the main key was that I wanted our bunker game to translate into our chipping and pitching. So kind of the same idea, where we're using the sole of the club rather than the leading edge of the club to prevent it from digging. And I think that the key phrase that we used was a wider margin of error. Make it easy on yourself. When we first started hitting some shots, the ball was back, hands were forward, exposing the leading edge, very steep. We were digging up some of the ground. We had the same issues that we had in the bunker. We would either hit too far behind, miss the ball, hit a chunk shot, or lift up at the last minute, not hit the ground at all and hit these thin shots. So what we changed, just like in the bunker, was moving the ball further up in the stance, getting the handle higher up, and then also more vertical rather than leaning it forward. We softened the arms like a putting stroke, and then had a nice, very level and low stroke where we're just brushing the ground for that dollar bill length. We want the club gliding across the ground for about 5 inches, or at least that's what it will feel like, to prevent the club from digging. When we do this, we can hit nice little shots, consistent contact. And then the other part of this was changing the club, using lower lofted clubs to hit different shots, rather than changing our setup and changing our stroke to bring in inconsistency. Mr. P, thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I also hope that it will help your game this week during the Member Guests in Westchester. Have a great time.